Today on Locked On Twins, we're going to take a look at the Pagoda Division projections from Baseball Prospectus. How do they think your Minnesota Twins will fare compared to the rest of the division? And beyond that, we'll take a look at not only the rest of the division, but also the rest of MLB at large. This is Locked On Twins.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello again, and welcome back to Locked On Twins. I'm your host, Brandon Warren. You can unfollow me on Twitter at Brandon_WARNE. And joining me as he does every single time, Answer Dave Brown. Mr. Dave Brown, how are we doing tonight?
Well, I don't join you every single time. Once in a while, you have a pinch hitter. But
True.
I'm doing great. I'm enthralled with the Pagoda Pythagorean projections.
I think you just combined Pythagorean and theorem and went Pythagorean, which I'm not going to hate on it, but yeah. And we actually, I think, both agreed that sometimes all of this data can be a little overwhelming, especially this time of year where there's still a lot of things we don't know yet. Actually, on Prospectus, they have a couple stories about unsigned players and how many of them could still be difference makers. And I think they said that last year around this time, they had like 12 or 15, and this year it's 35. So we're still all kind of trying to wrap our brains around the end of the off season, and they're already getting out trying to tell you that the Minnesota Twins are going to win X number of games and finish in XTH position. I don't want to give that away yet because that's for the rest of the show. But yeah, so for me, I'm trying to figure out, what do I think of these projections? We know projections generally skew on the conservative side. So we'll see where it goes from there. But thanks for making Locked On Twins your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, also on YouTube, which premieres almost every evening at 11 p.m. Central. So you can check us out then. We really do enjoy people checking us out live, hanging out in the chat and all that good stuff. And as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, we're your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. All right, Dave Brown. Prospectus, projections. How do you feel, generally speaking, about these? Because I think, again, I don't want to harp on the casual fan or whatever, but sometimes they take these as gospel when it's kind of just, and if you look lower on the page, there's like a distribution of simulated outcomes, and they kind of just settle on the median, or I don't know what you would call it, the most likely outcome. But, there's percentiles to it. There's all this different stuff. Really what it's just trying to give you a feel for is like a general range of wins for a team. Is that pretty much how you've always read it?
Yeah. It seems like we have these conversations every year too. And then people forget what these are for. And certainly how, I don't know if they forget or do they ever like look into how they're created or what they're for, or I don't know. It's, you can't take it with too much gospel. When it says Twins, do I say how many wins they have?
Sure.
The Twins?
You can
88.6.
I'm saying 89. I'm rounding up.
Are you?
Why not?
I suppose.
It'd be two wins. It'd be 2 wins
they
better than
that
last
4/10. I don't know.
Well, it would be 2 wins better than last season. And I think what a lot of, again, people who may not have watched the Twins super closely realize that, they won the division. Yeah, they made some noise in the postseason, but they left a lot of wins on the diamond last year in terms of the offense really sputtering early. I mean, we've been over this, but in Sonny Gray's starts, they were 14-18 for a guy who could have, in theory, won the Cy Young Award. He was in the conversation. So they left some wins on the table there. Byron Buxton, really, really tough season. started out, as I recall, fairly well, kind of petered out and then was hurt and couldn't play. Carlos Correa had arguably the worst season of his career, if not just the worst season of his career. Jose Miranda completely disappeared. Max Kepler disappeared in the first half. Like, there were a lot of things that did not go the Twins' way, and they still managed to not only win 87 games, make some noise in the playoffs, but for whatever reason, yeah, these projections like this team even more. Sans Sonny Gray, sans Kenta Maeda. So all the angst
And
of
full Sands.
we'll see. He didn't hit the list of DFAs, so good for him there.
Right.
Things are just peachy and beachy in his life, I guess. But
Brandon, all these memories about the 2023 season, it's reminding me of. It seems like we're still playing that season, like we're still trying to justify it or,
yeah,
explain it away. It ended on such a it ended with a loss in the playoffs, but before that, they won a little playoff series for the first time in forever, and lots of good things happened. I don't think we should be having to sort of refight the 2023 season every time we come up with a prediction here for 2024. So,
but
it's a new team, it's a new era, or it's a new season anyway.
Well, you've read my Twitter feed before, right? Like, I have to fight
that
that all
pretty much is your Twitter feed, is it not?
What's that?
That pretty much is your Twitter feed, just kind of arguing over what happened last season. No, that didn't happen. The Twins were terrible. People are trying to convince you that you didn't see what you saw.
Maybe I can steal a line from Roddy Piper, and it's my Twitter feed is fight or flight, and flight just left. So, doesn't he say I'm here to chew gum and kick some? And yeah, love Roddy Piper.
There's a lot of gum.
Yeah. Well, you shouldn't be having gum on a podcast anyway. But
sound good. But anyway, so the Baseball Prospectus has its PECOTA, not for the individuals, at least that we can find.
Not yet.
But for the teams, and it's got the Twins winning 88.6 games, or as you call it, 89. And I think that's probably a little light.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives them a 68.5%, so almost 69, almost a really nice chance of winning the AL Central. Or an 8.5% chance of being the wild card. A 77% chance of making the playoffs. A 53.5% chance of making the second round.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it is pretty good, especially that's good for any team. So it is positive. It is a positive. I mean, you could be the White Sox, who are slated to go 65 and 97 or so, and 65.9 and 96.1. Just imagine Jerry Reinsdorf trying to get his head around that. It could be much worse. But the Twins the computer says the Twins are in good shape, and I agree.
77% playoff odds. Only the Yankees and Astros are higher,
right,
in the AL. In the National League, you've got the Braves and the Dodgers. So I mean, that you're the talk of the walk in the AL, maybe even AL Central, but even in the AL, like consensus third best team, and certainly in the conversation for they could outperform the Yankees. We all saw the Yankees last year.
Yeah,
they weren't world beaters.
I don't know why the robot thinks the Yankees are good for 94. I know it's a range of outcomes, but
it doesn't. Yeah, I don't see it.
I don't see it either. But I suppose it could happen. Aaron Judge, Arson Judge bounces back and has an MVP type season, and they added a couple of really nice pieces in the offseason and transactions, and could always add more. I mean, it could, but they've got the Orioles finishing third, I think, with 86.7 wins. I think the one thing about PECOTA is when you look at really young teams like the Orioles that don't have a lot of history behind them, have you done it at the major league level? The computer seems to really like that. And, the Orioles they didn't come out of nowhere. I think people kind of saw them coming a little bit, but, winning 100 games with all those young players they don't have a lot of history behind them, the mathematical probabilities are going to knock you down even after the one great season. So that's another thing to keep in mind, exactly what PECOTA is measuring.
Yeah.
The Orioles don't have a huge track record in the major leagues of success. These players, they're all new.
Well,
So it's going to be off a little bit, possibly, from what people are expecting.
Well, and sometimes these projections are like 3-year aggregates or whatever too. So there isn't a lot of like you also kind of pre-programmed in the idea that Gunnar Henderson, maybe he'll have that sophomore slump. And again, not that that's immediately baked into the equation or the calculus or whatever, but that variability of young players, I think is something I think you're really getting to something there where it's like they know, it's not impossible for Adley Rutschman to take a step back. Maybe he's only a 3-win catcher or 2.5-win catcher because the bat sags a little bit. Like, we don't think that's going to happen. There's really no reason for that to happen. But PECOTA's like, yeah, but you didn't think Jose Miranda would have a complete lost year either, and they have to account for that. So
right.
And again, not to say that Jose Miranda is that level of prospect, but if somebody would have told you he would have been a negative WAR player or whatever his OPS was, you would have assumed something really bad happened to him. And in some respects it did, and in some respects it didn't. Let's do this. Let's take a quick second, talk about Ibotta. When we come back on the other side, we'll look at these projections a little bit more and see how not only the Twins look to fare, but the rest of the division, because the teams have all been active in their own ways, but how much of it will matter, and can anyone topple the Twins? We're going to take a look at that in just a moment. But first, Ibotta wants to let you know that, we're in the new year. We're in resolution time. We're well into the new year now, about 5 weeks, but a lot of people, looking at if you're saving money like you wanted to, fix that budget, lose some weight, maybe just take better care of yourself. Well, for Ibotta, you can take better care of your budget because, we could all use a little extra cash in our pockets, and that's where Ibotta comes in. It's a free app that gives you the most cash back every time you shop on hundreds of items, from groceries to beauty supplies to toys. Like, you will be surprised. You'll crack open the app and it will basically have a million different things at your disposal. It's almost difficult to wrap your brain around it. So I would definitely recommend jumping in and looking at it before you go to use it, just so you kind of get a feel for it. But the reason we love it is because the average Ibotta user earns $145 per year. That's a shopping trip for my family for sure. You can get a couple tanks of gas off that. You can take the kids to a trampoline park. There's a lot of things you could do with that extra $145. I don't need to tell you how to spend your money. And you get money, real money. It's not just points that you got to turn into something. Cash, cold hard cash. So join the 50 million plus savers and earn cash back every time you shop from over 2,700 brands and retailers, including Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. For instance, my favorite local grocery store, it's on there. So right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONMLB when you register. I already did it. You need to do it too. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back, and use code LOCKEDONMLB. That's IBOTTA in the App Store or Google Play, and use code LOCKEDONMLB. All right, Dave, we are looking at Baseball Prospectus projections. Twins 89 and 73, which would be 2 wins better than last season. The only teams projected to win more than 89 games on the AL side are the Yankees, which we talked about, and the Astros, both of whom are in the 94 to 95 range. Atlanta, 100.6. Atlanta looks so good coming into spring training. And then LA, 102.1. The defending NL champions are 85.3. That's Arizona. And the defending Texas Rangers, or defending champion, AL pennant and World Series champion, Rangers are projected for 86.6 wins. So again, a Twins fan mentality that's kind of pervasive around here is winning the division isn't enough. What do you do in October? I want to put to bed, first of all, that notion that you have to win the division to reach the next level, or at least wild card, which is hard to do in the Central. But even look no further back than last season's World Series. Both of the teams that played in the World Series won right around the number of games that the Twins are projected to win. I think that the Twins fan mentality of everything has to be perfect to win the World Series is shockingly off base. And this projection, regardless of if they add another pitcher like I'd like them to, paints the Twins in a very positive light.
Yeah, it's very good news. It's as good news as projections and predictions can be. There's I was thinking about, sort of contrasting, like they have the Orioles winning 86 games or whatever it is, and we said, well, it's because the players don't have, most of the roster doesn't have a big track record. But the Twins, for all their youth in certain spots, this, I would say that Carlos Correa is a good bet to have a better regular season than he did last year. Buxton is certainly due to bounce back. He hasn't had very many complete seasons, but for 100 games, I could see him performing somewhat like he did a couple years ago, right before the contract kicked in. And there's other players, a full season out of Max Kepler in right field, where he hit very well in the second half and got off to a slow start. A whole season of that, is worth a win or two, certainly to the Twins in the big picture. Ryan Jeffers coming into his own a little bit. There's a lot of reasons to for a computer program and for good old humans to be optimistic about what the Twins can do in this coming season. And I think everybody's not everybody's impatient, but people are, they want the finished product now. And that's just, we know that's not necessarily how the front office is working at this point. But they are in a really good position. And I think even if they don't necessarily add another starting pitcher or another slugger in our timetable, they're in a position where they're going to be contending, leading the division, something like that, well into the season. And then they're going to be in a position to add when the time comes. And I think the Twins are in great shape for that.
So you keep mentioning a computer. Are you telling me that Bill Pacoda, former Braves utility infielder, is not the one making these projections? Like,
I consider him more of a Royals utility infielder, but
yeah,
that's where that's the Bill Pacoda I knew.
Well, it's like you're telling me a Hidden Valley made this ranch, like that kind of joke.
Is there no? I understand the joke you're making. Is there really no Hidden Valley though? Somebody made the salad dressing at some point and marketed it to the world, and I choose to believe that story is real. We believe in Santa Claus in this house.
Well, Found Ranch is is it Found Money is, I don't know, but nevertheless, you mentioned the Orioles. I like that comparison, and here's why. They have the Orioles projected for 740 runs scored and 675 allowed. That is roughly an identical differential than the Twins at 739 and 676. So 2 runs off, 1 on each side, which, if that comes out to 2 wins over the course of the season, to me that would, or even just 1 win, probably the difference in the divisions, right? I mean, every team in the East is projected to win 80 plus. You don't quite play your division as much as you used to. But I think if you were to tell Twins fans, hey, you could start your fandom over with Minnesota's players or Baltimore's players, I kind of feel like Twins fans would pick Baltimore. And this is a good maybe indicator of it's not as far off as people might think. Right.
And Baltimore too, as far as the young players they have and the prospects, it's really kind of a generational situation. I mean, they've done a very good job, and they've been lucky in developing and drafting and developing these players. They have a lot of talent, way too much, probably more than they need to to get to point C, if you will, championship point. I mean, they have, they traded one of their shortstops, but they got like two more, and they don't need either of them either.
Right.
In the minor leagues, it's just kind of not an embarrassment of riches, but that's John Angelos is the embarrassment, but he's trying to sell the team, so that's good. But yeah, the Twins don't have that kind of organization as good a job as they've done adding talent, but they're in. As for this season, as for 2024, they're in about as good a position as anybody can be to win the division and win in the playoffs. I say that without any bias, or I look at what they have, and they're close. They've had there's a couple players in the roster. Correa, he knows what it takes, and they're in a really good spot, and the Pacoda projections reflect this. And I look at like who could sneak up on them in the AL Central, and I like, well, maybe people like to say Detroit. I'll believe that when I see it.
Right.
The Royals, I can't really imagine them making a leap this year either. As much as great as they've gone from probably 60 wins to maybe 80 if everything goes right.
Yep.
Cleveland, I want to say Cleveland, but they've got a rookie manager, and they have not added a darn thing, I don't think, in the offseason.
Really
And
anything.
they have a lot of hope, and they need a lot of prospects who aren't as good as most of the Orioles prospects to come through. So, the Twins are going to have to really screw something up or just have terrible luck to not win the AL Central.
Yeah.
I don't see anybody sneaking up on them.
Right. I agree with that. Let's take a quick second, bring up our friends FanDuel, then we'll bring things full circle here before we get you out of here for the week. But first, like I said, a word from FanDuel. Happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Dave Brown, I don't think we'll get together again until the Super Bowl has been played, or at the very least, the show will propagate to all systems. So who do you got? I know where you live. That sounds sinister, but I also know what's that?
You don't know anything about me.
Yeah.
I'm pretty confident in the Chiefs. Pretty confident in Patrick Mahomes. I like their defense too.
Yeah, they play an interesting brand of football. The Niners do too. And the nice thing is that it's two totally different brands. So it's always fun to see how those clash. It's like, when you have a good offense against a good defense and a bad offense and a bad defense, that makes for a fun, can they stop this one? Can they score? Whatever. So we'll see if that is at play or anything like that. But again, Super Bowl Sunday, we got all kinds of fun stuff planned. We have a couple different families coming over. We're going to eat some meatballs and some chicken wings and talk about the commercials and watch the halftime show, all that fun stuff. FanDuel, though, has so many ways for you to end the season with a W or 2 or 3. Not only can you bet on who will win Super Bowl 58, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score touchdowns, how many points will be scored, and so much more. You really just got to go check it out for yourself. New customers, join today, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. So visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/locked-on. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, Dave Brown, I wanted to ask you that how much do you care about or think about with regards to these projections? How much or how many I don't know which would be. How many war are still floating out there in terms of Jordan Montgomery and Jorge Soler and a few other guys? Like, does that factor into, if the Twins add, they're not going to add either of those guys, I don't think. But does that give you 2 more wins? Where do those wins come from? Who gets those losses? Like, that is kind of a part of the sliding scale of these projections that I never really know how to account for.
Yeah. Well, I think that's maybe, I don't know if that's the biggest reason, but that is a large reason why you can't take these numbers yet too seriously because the rosters aren't set, and Pacoda doesn't know who's going to get hurt. I mean, it has an idea, but it doesn't know who's going to get hurt. It doesn't know what trades are going to be made or when.
Yeah.
And there's some other things too that we could not really expect it to know. So, I mean, that they say, well, that's why they play the games. It's not on paper. Very true. I mean, that is kind of a trite thing to say, but that is the truth about baseball. You don't, you give yourself the best chance to win, and you see what happens from there, and it has to happen on the field. You can't you can't make calculations, and you box scores and spreadsheets do need to come from what we see with our eyes on the field. So that's why you can't get too, this helps inform you. It helps give you an idea, but it should not, there's lots of X factors, as we all know. There's stuff that we don't know what to ask yet. So it's kind of like going to the moon. You know what you know, but you also know your limitations and understand what you don't know yet.
That's baseball, Susan. I just think, though, they play tennis on clay, on grass, on a hard court. Why can't you play baseball on paper? I mean, it would it's like those. I don't know if you remember watching old games at the Metrodome when they got the new turf. You'd see a ball ricochet, and there'd be those like chopped up tire looking pieces kicking everywhere.
Little black nanobites.
Yeah, maybe you could play on paper instead. Probably not a great idea, though.
I think the closest we could get is like wood chips, that being the same material that is made of paper, or paper that is made of.
Yeah.
You know where the prepositions go. Fill them in yourself at home.
Yeah.
So that's as close as we can get, though. Like wood chips on a playground, rather than actually on paper. So
I hate the mulch, because I have to rake them back into my berm on my yard. It's nice to have a yard, though. Get off my yard if you're on it, though. The division. Let's look at the division as a whole before we get out of here. They have Minnesota, Cleveland, Detroit, KC, Chicago. So for me, I feel pretty good about Minnesota first. I feel pretty, I don't want to say good because that sounds mean, but I feel pretty confident about Chicago in last. How did the 2, 3, 4 line up for you? First of all, do you concur with me on 1 and 5? And then how do you line up 2 through 4 in your own mind?
I concur. I Steve Kerr with you on certainly 1. I haven't looked really hard at the White Sox yet. There's one thing that's kind of bothers me.
I wouldn't, honestly. Just don't.
I mean, maybe it's something instinctive that in me that,
They signed Jesse Chavez today.
Did they really?
Yeah, minor league deal.
The White Sox, that can't be his last team. I hope it's not. I hope maybe he'll get traded to somebody.
He'll be a Brave by the end of the season. We'll come back to this. Somehow he'll turn up with the Braves. He'll make 40 appearances for them or some goofy thing. 40 appearances in the second half, which mathematically feels impossible. But he just seems to have a rubber arm. I don't know.
He's got the biggest pants in the league.
Wow.
Or should I say maybe he's got the skinniest legs? That's kind of one of baseball's mysteries. Is it that Jesse Chavez has really skinny legs, or he has more material in his pants than any other player?
He's wearing Adam Dunn's pants. He's wearing Adam Dunn's pants.
Maybe so. That would be that would explain it. I don't know why Adam Dunn doesn't have his pants though. So I can't. The thing about the White Sox is they still have one of the higher payrolls, certainly in the division.
First in the division, 151.
So that money's going to somebody, and for all the bad things that happened last year, they still have a few players on the roster who were in a playoff contender in recent years. So if Yohan Moncada, if Eloy Jimenez, if so, I'm trying to figure out. Well, maybe we're shortchanging the White Sox a little bit, and they can. I don't want to say compete. I would not say that, but do something with this $151 million payroll that's better than last place.
Like
that's
third place. Yeah, maybe third. Well, I do think there's a possibility of that. I mean, even if they win 75 games, that's a healthy jump from their projection and still third place. That to me is within an acceptable range of outcomes with, Dylan Cease. The starting rotation to me is kind of where it all falls apart, because they'll probably be able to score runs, but not prevent them. So we'll see what happens. But
You
I
think the
think
starting rotation is going to have them fall apart? Wait till you look at the bullpen.
yeah, that's where Jesse Chavez is going to be there. Jesse Chavez and John Brebbia sounds like a buddy cop show, and not
That would be a great show.
it would
Maybe that should be a Netflix show.
well, I don't know. They're not. They stopped taking my ideas. So you'll have to submit that. So I'm gonna go Minnesota, Detroit, Cleveland, KC, Chicago. I just think Detroit has a few more things go in their direction. There is, though, according to Pacoda, an 8 or 9 game difference between second place Cleveland and third place Detroit. To you, is that too big of a gap?
It's a big gap if everything goes right for Cleveland and they're able to, I don't want to say hang around with the Twins, but hang near them. I see the Twins probably winning 94.
That's the number I'm at, 93, 94.
And then maybe Cleveland, we're down to, oh no, we have another minute. And then maybe Cleveland, 86, 87, like at the highest. So I forgot your original question. Oh, so I mean, if the Tigers, if their young players don't go into horrendous slumps, AJ Hinch is still a good manager. I mean, I could see that being an interesting battle for second place, maybe.
Yep. I don't hate the Tigers. I don't want it to come across as though I do. It's just for all the positives they showed last year, all of these teams do have a ways to go to catch the Twins. I mean, the Twins have Jose Miranda not penciled in their lineup. Trevor Larnach, guys who may not be big league studs or maybe not even big league great players, but have the pedigree to be pretty decent on the outside looking in. And those teams don't have guys like that. Those guys are all in the big leagues.
The Tigers would kill to have someone like Trevor Larnach. I can't believe I just said that.
Yeah, well, anyway, hey, that's all we got time for. We're going to have to wrap it up here. Thanks for hanging out with Locked On Twins, and we'll see you tomorrow night.